I call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, April 11th, 2022, and the time is 6 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. Before we get started, I'd like to thank members of the public for attending the school board business meeting to observe the work being done on behalf of all school district stakeholders. We appreciate the time you took to be here this evening. Dr. Hillman, we have some items in the table file.
Yes, we had several items in the table file this evening. We included a slide deck for the budget prioritization update. This is a similar slide deck to what we used at our work session last week. We also have a number of personnel items, including appointments, increase, decrease, change in assignment. We have some leaves of absences, and we have one resignation. So that's the table file this evening.
Okay, thank you. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. You have an objection? Oh, okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Jeff, second by Tom. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We do not have anyone signed up for public comment tonight, so we will move on to the next item, which is announcements and recognitions. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, we have several announcements and recognitions this evening. I have a activities winter recap that was provided by Activities Director Joel Olson. 3 of our Knowledge Bowl teams participated in the state tournament this weekend in Brainerd. Participants on those teams: Ava Becken, Ely Hoffert, Nadia Cookshausen Ralph, James Shuffleton, Will Bowmaster, Wyatt Barber, Max Casson, Gabriel Fisher Navarro, Quinn Lovick, Brecca Midori, Peter Hillman, Megan Kelly, Carter Lefkowitz, Cricket Mooring, and Colin Thomas Green. So congratulations.
Nice.
As you might imagine, we swept all 3 spots from the Southeast region going to state, and we're very proud of their performance there as well. We're very proud to share with you that senior Maggie Malika is the first ever Northfield Athena Award winner. This award recognizes an outstanding metro area senior female athlete. And Maggie was the 2022 Minnesota Senior Goalie of the Year, the 2022 Herb Brooks Award winner, and led her team to the state tournament. Maggie will be attending St. Thomas to play hockey in the fall. So congratulations to Maggie Malika. We are so proud of what you've done, Maggie, and what you're going to do. We want to congratulate freshman Ella Pagel on something historic. She is the first ever Northfield female state wrestling champion. And so congratulations to Ella. We started to see young women in the wrestling program over the last several years, and the state tournament this year. So very proud to have Ella win the state championship. So congratulations to Ella. Senior Jake Messner placed 2nd at the state wrestling tournament, and our wrestling team placed 5th at state. A couple of other athletic items. Boys swim was the section 1A runner-up. Wrestling and boys hockey teams were also their conference championships, and the Olympic weightlifting team placed 2nd at the state meet. And so we really just had a sensational winter season for our athletics and activities, and just congratulate all of the students on their hard work, their perseverance, and congratulate them on their success. Thrilled to share. Yeah, you can go ahead and clap for them. Absolutely. And I'm really thrilled to share with you that back after an absence of a couple of years is Arts a la carte. And if you've never attended Arts a la carte, if you're watching the live stream, you've not attended it, please come on April 22nd at the Northfield High School from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. It is an amazing display of our students' artistic work. Really highlights the art of our seniors, but all art students are participants. There's a lot of hands-on activities for kids. There's even going to be a maker fair as part of it this year. And so this is something that prior to the pandemic, this was really a Northfield staple, an institution, if you will, for a long time. And if you listen to Catherine Norrie on the podcast from KYMN Radio, she describes the history of Arts a la carte. And we're a little concerned because it's been off for a couple of years that people don't know just the real energy that program brings. So we're just really encouraging people to come to Arts a la carte Friday, April 22nd at Northfield High School, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. There's some awards given out at the end. It is just one of those things that makes Northfield Northfield. So please come back and attend that. Arts a la carte. There's some promotion of it on KYMN Radio, and I know that there'll be an article about it in the Northfield News this Wednesday. We also want to make sure that we take this opportunity to congratulate Bubba Sullivan, longtime football coach, of course, current English teacher. And of course, Bubba has done a lot of things for our school over the years, but most recently he was honored by being inducted into the Minnesota Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame. And Bubba became the head football coach in Northfield in 1989. He went on to win 208 games as the head coach. He won the 1997 4A state title as a coach. And so we're just really proud of Bubba's work and proud to see that the State Football Coaches Association recognized his lifetimes of contribution to Minnesota high school football. So congratulations to Bubba. And those are the announcements that I have this evening.
Outstanding. Board members, anybody have any announcements or additions? Okay, good. We are moving on to item 5, our items for discussion and reports. And we have Dr. Hillman and Director Murdersdorf with an update on the budget prioritization for us tonight. Welcome, Val.
Yes, so we are going to just do a little reprise, a brief reprise of the priority-based budgeting presentation that we gave at the work session the other night, just for people who are attending the meeting here tonight or who are watching online. And then we're trying just to give you a little bit more of an update in terms of looking at specifically, we just want to talk about that walk-away question that we had at the work session of what we would think the best way to gather another round of public feedback would be. And we talked about that at the work session. I asked you to think about it, and then I'll seek your feedback here tonight. So this will be it'll be a fairly brief presentation. And then again, high level, and we will move forward. So I'm gonna plug in here. Okay, so Val is going to do the talking. I'm going to do the slide advancement.
Sounds good. So just a little reminder. Of course, you get a tickle right before you start. Just about the why we have to reduce the budget, why can't we just increase revenue, and why we chose priority-based budgeting, which is slightly different than what we have done historically as a district. So we have declining enrollment currently, and our most recent demographic study also indicated that we are going to decline another 400 students over the next 10 years. We also know that we have been chronically underfunded by the legislature. And really for the revenue, 70% of our revenue is tied directly to enrollment in some fashion. We are also, in addition to that 70% is just from the state. We're highly regulated, as we should be. We are a local subdivision of the government, so that is an expectation, but we're regulated. So we have the max operating levy allowed by statute. That's not a number we can just choose. There are dollar amounts and limits for almost every form of revenue that we have access to. I didn't do the last one. And then we chose the priority-based budgeting as a way to think differently about budgeting. Historically, we used the program-based budgeting, and that was really breaking the budget and talking about what were the things that people could effectively live without in those budgets. And we really wanted to flip that narrative and talk about what was most valuable. So we had 60 people participating in 3 different groups, and we wanted to know what programs and services does the district offer that is most valuable to them from their role and association with the district, and really taking that and being able to tie it directly to our strategic plan to make sure that we are following through to the best of our ability with that direction. So this is kind of the process as it is right now. We started with the community engagement and made sure that our strategic plan was updated. And the board approved that in January. We then went to the program prioritization. And so over the last 2 months, we've had 3 different teams meet. They met 4 times, really just gathering feedback about what they would like to see prioritized, that they feel gives us the best chance to meet our strategic commitments and benchmarks. And now we're in the priority decision process where we're taking all of that feedback and really trying to operationalize it. And so at the next board meeting, you'll get a formal list of the recommendations. And then May 9th is when the official vote on that will be. So in terms of the process, the first meeting was all three groups together as a large group, just going over some historical items, our strategic plan, our financial forecast, and making sure that they had enough context to help understand kind of where we're at and what we're expecting of them. And then at the end of that meeting, they each had about 30 or 40 minutes to really kind of get a brief introduction to what we're currently spending in each of the budget packages that they were looking at. So we had an elementary package, a secondary package, and a district services package. The second meeting, we regrouped quickly and just kind of set parameters and instructions. And then they spent the vast majority of that meeting just trying to wrap their head around the budget. It's pretty difficult to take $60 million budget and break it into 3 packages and then expect people to just understand it after 2 hours, but we did our best. I will say after that meeting, it was a lot of more questions than answers. And so we did a survey and took some feedback. And the third meeting was really kind of brought up to a higher level. So instead of looking at the detailed line items, we provided them with a document that asked them what they want to prioritize and why, and how it ties to our current strategic commitments and benchmarks. And then they voted on that. They each had 12 dots to vote up whichever priorities that were most important to them. And then we took that feedback and basically presented them at meeting 4 with a few potential budgets, and then had them kind of vote rank them again to get that specific feedback. District services ran a little bit differently just because of the types of programs and the scope of what's offered. And so we did that, offered like 1 package and then just got their specific feedback about that. So this is the elementary team, and that's a picture of them working at one of the meetings. And the elementary, all of the groups really talked about special ed. That was one of the departures from our previous way of the program-based budgeting, is we actually included special ed in each of the packages rather than its own separate package. I think it made it very clear how the cross subsidy can impact the budget, which was definitely a goal. We wanted them to understand that it was part of the curriculum, part of the K-12, and that special ed students are gen ed students first, but really asking to kind of contain spending as much as possible and be more efficient and innovative if possible to not increase that maintenance of effort. Class size was their other really large priority, and they wanted to make sure that we were meeting all of the kids' needs. So 20 or less in K3 and 23 to 25 in grades 4, 5. And so this is just an example of a couple of the sheets that we used where they wrote actual priority statements and ranked them. This is the secondary team. So you can see we had a pretty large group of people that were willing to commit their time and help us work through this. The secondary priorities were a little different than the elementary. They had a lot more that were ranked very closely. So continued mental health by licensed professionals was definitely the top priority, which I guess is not surprising coming out of a pandemic. That's an important and on the front of people's minds. Keeping kids in the district through creative scheduling. There was a lot of conversation about PSEO and the impact that has on our revenue. Class size here was important. Electives, co-curricular, were all kind of the large themes there. And then again, another sample of the activities that we had them rank. And then this is the district services team. And their priorities, again, this was a little more challenging of a package, just to wrap your head around all of the things that district services does. Again, having a focus on special ed and how can we be more innovative or strategic in our staffing or other ways to contain or reduce maintenance of effort. Making sure that we're having good use of our technology, e-learning to promote learner outcomes, having each building have bilingual people and systems to allow Spanish-speaking families to connect with their child's school, hiring diverse staff, technology. So you can see all of those. It was a pretty wide range of things, but I would say it was fairly difficult to tie them directly to budget line items, but certainly lots of good feedback for our long range planning. And an example of the priorities and then the budget. So financial stewardship, obviously, we take that very seriously here. There are several things, and we've talked about this throughout the whole process. There are a few different avenues we have to help kind of step in the budget reductions. And so one of them is fund balance. We did do an analysis about our 16% goal comparative to other districts our size. And we've known for a while that it's higher than the norm, but we also have very good reasons for that. So that is one strategy we have. About 1% of fund balance equates to roughly $600,000. And so we could choose, the board could choose to say 14% instead of 16. And that would effectively give us $1.2 million to cover for a year or two a specific program or service that's on the list to be reduced. We also reserved about $1.9 million of our federal COVID funding specific for budget stabilization. So we have these available to kind of step in those reductions. And then the other piece, do you want to talk specific about capital projects? You want me to?
Go ahead.
So we currently have a capital projects levy that's voter approved at $750,000 a year. And that expires in 2024. So this is probably one of the only additional revenue sources that we have not maximized. Again, it is voter approved, but we can use this specifically to fund our technology services technician salaries and benefits, which helps free up money in the general fund. So we have some information from Ellers about potential costs to taxpayers and that sort of thing that we can have conversations about. But that is one avenue that could also help offset some general fund costs that helps the overall budget target. I think that, and the timeline, next steps. So we are kind of operationalizing and finalizing the budget plan and recommendations. And like I said, that will come at the next board meeting. We are looking for feedback tonight about some type of community forum that would allow for some broader input from the community. So we can make some decisions about that tonight. May 9th will be the formal vote on the official recommendations for reductions. And then the general fund budget that incorporates all of the changes and planning items will come on 5/23. And then the board will be asked to approve all the budgets at the June 13th meeting because it will all have been presented at that point. And we are required by June 30th to adopt budgets for the next year.
So I think the key thing is that we are not quite ready tonight to provide you with any specific program reductions or have the discussions about those kinds of specific items. But what we do want you to know is that we will have that formal list of things for you at the next board meeting. And we'll most likely be able to provide those to folks well in advance of that board meeting. We think we're going to be able to start having that budget plan finalized later this week. If there are programs that are affected, we'd like them to know right before it comes before the board. So just anticipate we'll most likely later this week starting to talk about those things, sharing those with you, and then formally at the April 25th meeting. But the key thing that I would like the feedback on tonight, as Val said, is just, questions you have about the process. And then when we think about the next community forum opportunity, thinking about how we are able to get one additional round of community feedback. So let's go back to the beginning. Anybody who wanted to was invited to participate in the strategic planning process. They had multiple opportunities to participate in setting the vision and the plan for the district moving forward. Lots of opportunities for that. Anyone who volunteered to be part of a budget committee was assigned to a budget committee. So we did quite an extensive opportunity to try to recruit people, and we did. We got over 60 people between staff and community to participate in those budget teams. So we've had a lot of budget or community participation there. And then, once the program reductions are shared, we've been prioritizing what is the most important. Of course, there are reductions, as we've said a few times, and we want to get an additional round of feedback. So it could be a couple of different ways. It could be more of like what you would think about as a community hearing, where we, have the board sitting and able to listen to people who could sign up for a time slot to come up and say for 2 minutes a piece that they could share their perspective on the budget adjustments. Another strategy that we have used in the past is where we would do more of a small group piece. So people would come in, there'd be a presentation to start. Both of these methods, there'd be a presentation to start, presentation to begin, and then administrators and board members, paired up at 7 different tables where people could come and, have a conversation, get questions answered, and have more of a conversation about that. And then board members and administrators could report back to the larger board at the end of that meeting in more of a kind of an auditorium setting. Or you could have kind of a combination of the two, where there's a presentation for about 45 minutes. People have an opportunity to go to those tables and ask questions, get their questions answered, make sure that their feedback is heard. And then you come back to the larger setting where people could then do more of a public comment, like a couple of minutes apiece, be able to share their direct feedback with the board and with the community there. So those are a couple of different ways that you can do it. I just want to get the feedback from the board as to what you would like from that perspective. And then once we know what we're looking at, we will start to look at scheduling that, checking with you to schedule that evening sometime between April 25th and May 9th. So Claudia, if there's a way we can just facilitate a discussion here, that'd be great.
Sure. Comments. Okay. Tom.
Started off, how are you going to disseminate the information and to whom? Will it be just the school families or the community in general?
Yeah, so we would do our typical, what has been fairly successful cascading communication process. So we would, of course, provide that information to families in both English and in Spanish. For our Spanish-speaking families, any message that we send home from the district, they also get a voicemail recorded in Spanish so that they, get it in writing and they get it via voicemail. We would also use what I would call our key communicator networks. So that would be things like Rotary and Healthy Community Initiative and those folks that have some email lists where they're able to help us get the word out. We'll use KYMN Radio. We'll use the Northfield News. As appropriate, we can use our social media channels. We tend not to put this kind of thing on our social media channels, but that is something we could certainly do as well. So I have great confidence, Tom, that we would be able to make sure that people are aware of what's going on.
And I think that once people are aware, they're going to be motivated because it's now real and tangible. It's not just being talked about. So, and I think it's just my opinion. People are maybe more comfortable in conversations as opposed to getting up and standing in front of people and being grilled or not. But for what it's worth.
Good. Thank you. Jeff, did you want to say something?
It was 2011, the year we did this before?
Correct.
So my question would be, what do you think out of 2011 that we did well? And then what are we adding to or deleting from the process in 2011?
Yeah, so we're actually using a very similar process in terms of the number of people who are participating in 2011. The committee structure is a little bit different, but we still have several dozen people involved up front, which is important. there was one, what we're suggesting is there was another segment in the 2011 part where there was called the advisory team. And that was another group of community members who were specifically invited to come and hear the potential reductions and then to offer any feedback on the packages. So we're really looking at doing that, but more than just having an invite only, we're opening it to the entire community to participate. So that's just this community session would serve that same purpose, if you will, as what the advisory team did, but it would be open to all.
And along with that, when we're open to all, is there several opportunities for people to see where that's advertised, and they definitely have the opportunity to show up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one piece we will struggle with is that anytime you try to do, as we all know lately too, you try to find a meeting night, that can be challenging where everyone can attend. But what we'll do is we'll look at the calendar, we'll look at the time where we think there are the least number of kinds of activities that evening and do the best that we can to be able to avoid those things.
Anybody, Amy?
So in many ways, this is the most important part of the process because we need to really reach the people who will be affected. And I know it's also the hardest part. But normally, it's my sense that people don't really pay attention until all of a sudden they're told that their kid's activity has been cut, and that could be months down the line. So I just wanted to say that and just appreciate all that you are doing, and to encourage you to even look for more ways to get the word out, and maybe directly to the people who that we can pinpoint might be affected by certain specific cuts.
Yeah, as you know, we're serious about public input and gathering. So we will use everything that we reasonably can use to get the word out.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, Tom?
How will you use the feedback you get? What if everybody just says, no, you can't do that, and we're close to the deadline? How will that be handled?
So Tom, I think the key thing is that this public feedback is for how you use it as a board. So I think that we have done everything we can to get feedback from the community in shaping the process. But this event is really for you to hear from people who will be affected, because we will make a set of recommendations. Those recommendations will be presented publicly. People will then have the opportunity to use this kind of forum to provide feedback. Of course, we will provide other ways for people to provide written feedback as well. And then what I really envision this as is for us and for you as board members to really hear how these adjustments will impact people, and to determine, are there adjustments that as the elected representatives of the community charged with finalizing this decision, does the feedback given prompt you to consider any modifications that you'd like the district administration to consider? We then make our final recommendation, and you're not going to get you're not going to get one recommendations. We are not an omnibus bill kind of group of people, right? So you're going to get things that you'll be asked to act on that either make sense together, but not just one, vote all the reductions up or down. It will be based upon each area in which we're looking at reducing, more of a consent agenda kind of piece, but an area where we'll be able to take a look at some of these individually. So, we have been all doing the work so that we can get as much feedback as we can. We have invited people. I've done strategic planning sessions in all sorts of formats, right? Outside, inside, online, in person. We have spent a lot of time trying to seek the feedback of a representative group of stakeholders to put together a budget plan that makes sense. What I do want to just share with you and the people watching today and the folks here in the room is that the things that we have are valuable. Reasonable people can differ on what they think the priority of certain pieces are that we have in the district. But I can easily look anyone in the eye and say that all of the programs and services that we have are valuable to some of our students. We don't have things that are not valuable. While we could always be better at program evaluation and making difficult decisions, maybe to sunset programs that aren't getting the results that we had hoped for earlier than than or sooner rather than later. We could always get better at that. But every program that we have is something that is helping either objectively or from a person or a small groups of people's perception, helping, our students and families. As you know, we run the district very efficiently. When we look at the per pupil spending for administration, we rank 469th out of 502 traditional public school districts or charter schools. So our administration is very efficient and very lean. So the bulk of our money we're spending on really great programming for students. There is no way that we're going to bring something forward that people, oh yeah, that's great. Finally, time you got rid of that. That will not be the reaction, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to say within the resources that we have and to be responsible stewards like we always have been, this board and for preceding the people at this table have taken very seriously the stewardship of the resources entrusted to us. And as I've said, we are acting with a sense of urgency so that we don't end up in an emergency. And so long answer to your short question, Tom, I took the opportunity to kind of frame it as that as the elected representatives of the community, you're the ultimate feedback. You are the arbiter of this. And so you can take that feedback from the public and you can recommend that the administration make any additional adjustments to our recommendations, and then you'll vote on each piece and we'll move forward from there.
Excellent.
Can I just follow up real
Follow up,
quickly? Will there be enough time to do all that? Because the meeting is in May and then May 9th is when we vote on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a couple of pieces is that one is that whatever that evening looks like, that's the opportunity for people to provide additional feedback. And again, if we look back, we've been really, really asking very nicely and persistently to have people involved up until this point. I do agree that this is the point where it now becomes real for people. So the time would be on, whenever we have this, that if you say on May 9th, yep, we agree with these, but not these, we have time to fix a lot of those. We will be able to tell you I can give you a very specific piece. There are some things that have timelines. We are within the timelines for everything to this point. We are in good shape. But remember, the other part that you have that is so unusual, frankly, and is a blessing, is not only do we have the ability for you to determine what reductions you are going to authorize, we also have these additional dollars that you can allocate to say, we're going to push this. We're going to say this is going to be something that's going to be reduced, but we want you to push this off for another. I think that's inherent on us to make some recommendations with that, but not with all of it. So you'll have the one meeting in between, and then, what my experience is then it's game time, right? We can have a number of things, but I no matter how many times you come, there's going to become a point where, nope, it's time to make the decision. And I think we're at that point, Tom, on May 9th.
Thank you. And then Amy.
First, I want to thank you for being so planful about this process. So we do have a schedule that works. But I have one more thought is I would like you to be thoughtful about talking to the students, especially the secondary students, about possible changes, because they're the ones who are really directly affected and they need to have it presented to them in a way that they will appreciate and understand, and maybe have, maybe they're allowed to send emails with their feedback or given some other way of getting their thoughts to the board. But I would love to see them communicated with in a fashion that's appropriate. Maybe we have to do it on Snapchat or something. I don't know, but
We'll leverage the district youth council. Yep, the district youth council has been a great representative group of students to work with at the high school. And so we will work with them.
okay, thank you.
Good questions. Anyone else? Comment, question? Are we going to have some kind of document at that April 25th meeting?
Yes.
And could we distribute or advertise that along with the invitation to have
Yes.
people come? Okay, great.
Absolutely. So what we'll do is we put the recommendations together. That is the document that we will use to share with all the different stakeholder groups so people know exactly what it is that we're looking at, and then open the opportunity for people to question and discuss, because that's it. We want people to be very clear. Now, I do want to share that, when we talk about programs, and you talk about programming, sometimes people will immediately put a person with it. That oftentimes is the case. If you only have one teacher in one program, people know who those, but that first step is around programs, and people aren't tied to it, right? Because once we determine which programs are going to be reduced or discontinued, then we have contractual language that we use to determine which staff would be placed on unrequested leave of absence. So it's so hard, to think of it that way. And we are going to impact people, and that breaks my heart. I mean, we are relationship driven. And so there's just no way you can do this without affecting people in one way, shape, or form. So yes, all of those things will be available. The names of people who would potentially have an unrequested leave of absence, those will not be available until after, we formally authorize the reductions. And then we'll go through that process. And then coming back to you in the board packets would be those unrequested leaves of absences.
Good, thank you. Julie?
So it appears that I'm hearing that a consensus around, for those who've spoken, the format where people come to to a table, and I do support that, because I do think that it's easier for people to speak, directly to someone versus having to get up and speak publicly and also worry about a time frame. And so we've talked about there would be an online opportunity, and so a short video that would introduce that, I think, could be used really broadly in terms of how we communicate. So that, I think, will be an effective tool of communicating what we're doing. And then either the online survey or, you just, as a board, we all have emails, so people can share, with us directly as well. So I do support that. I'm just wondering if it would be a little confusing for some people to feel like, oh, I'm going to sit one-on-one and then I'm going to have an opportunity to speak. But I think having, those two distinct time periods might help people's schedules too. So as Amy said, I really appreciate the thought that's been put into how we do this. And the community piece is really important. So I appreciate the thought, again, that has gone into this format. And I think it will seem approachable, will seem, it won't be as intimidating as I recall some years where we were all up on stage and people had to come and, speak on a podium. And so I think this allows us much more accessibility and also the opportunity to ask questions as well of them. So I think will be a good format.
So I think the key thing is we'll decide whether or not we'll have a plan. If we're going to use this smaller group, we'll have a plan for where it could be at a table in a cafeteria, but we'll also explore having classrooms where board member and administrator could be in a classroom if we have, because then we'd also have the ability for, you're in the cafeteria, people can get pretty loud and you might not be able to hear. So we'll plan to have that small group and in that way so that people have the chance. I do think there has to be some kind of report out to the board, so that could be that the administrator taking notes or whomever would then do some kind of public report back in the auditorium so that people, have a chance to hear. I do think it's important for people to know that the entire board heard what they had to say. So, I think that some kind of recording and in terms of just taking notes in a general report, from each room would be the opportunity. And then that way people also have the chance to see, what the fruits of what their discussion was. So I'm going to go down that road right now with that plan. And that's the way we'll go with it.
And if I could, I didn't hear, every board member say they wanted to have the small group. So if somebody has a strong preference to not have the small groups, be a good time to share that. Amy?
Two more comments. First, I'm fortunate to have flexibility in my day, and if it makes sense at all to give the students a voice, to have a few board members meet in a room during flex hour or after school or something like that, I would definitely be open to that if you think that's a good solution. If the district youth council likes that, to make it as easy for the students to be able to talk about this as possible. So I wanted to throw that idea out there. And I also want to go into the weeds just a little bit about the unrequested leaves of absence, just because I like how planful you're being. And I want to add another facet to this plan, since this is something that we know will be happening. I would really love to see the people in human resources work out a way that they can help whoever these people end up being with the transition, help them find a new job, have them on some lists so they get priority if other jobs open up, or, just whatever we can do to ease that difficult time for them, beyond just, asking them how things are going, but really to give them some support to move on to the next part of their life.
Yeah, absolutely, Amy. In terms of the support of people, what I do need to be very clear about is that there is a priority list, and it is the unrequested leave process for specifically for teachers and educational assistants. Those are our two largest groups. So that's what I will use. So when a person is placed on unrequested leave of absence within the teaching contract, they are on a list. And if a position opens up within their licensure area, there is a process in which the contract governs how we contact them, offer them that opportunity. So that part is set in stone because it's already ideated in the contract. With the educational assistants, we have used this more often than with the teachers because as our special education needs change over the years, so do the number of EAs that we need. And so what the EAs, once we place the EAs, there's not a formal seniority piece when it comes to educational assistants and placing them in the open positions. If there were any, if we did have to make any reductions with educational assistants, I'm not suggesting that we do yet. I don't know the answer to that. In addition, we've had a hard time filling positions. So I think it's hard to think that there might be some EA, but there could be. And in that case, after everyone's been placed, they go on what's called the recall list. And again, there's a very prescriptive process that when jobs open in the district for which they are qualified for within their bargaining unit, that they are reestablished in the district. And then we certainly would be willing to help folks who have gone on unrequested leave of absence. We'd, of course, willing to write letters of reference and, do what we're able to do to help them know what the jobs are available for them in their licensure area. We can certainly make the job posting boards available, explain where people can look. We can certainly reach out to other places. And that typically a lot of times is done by your building principal. So between the building principal and human resources, those are the folks who would do what we could to help others.
That's all excellent news, but I'd love to see that piece of supporting people as they move to another institution. Helping them find the job boards, whatever it is, maybe formalized a little bit or instructions given to the principals that that's the expectation.
Any other questions or comments? I had a question about expanding the levy. How many salaries would that cover?
We have six technicians. I think it would include the network manager, the assistant network manager, and all of the technicians.
Thanks.
So it technically could cover all of those salaries in that description. We would just have to determine, we have to finalize what the salary and benefits for those positions would be. And then we'd have to go to the voters asking for an expansion of that operating capital, capital projects levy that would allow us to cover those salaries.
Thank you. And I agree that there's lots of ways for the community to get a hold of us. Like Julie was saying, we have our emails, so I'm confident that this community will reach out if they don't make it to one of the meetings. Good. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to the next item, which is Dr. Hillman presenting us an update on the district's operations and COVID-19 update.
Yes. All right. So we are going to continue to call this the operations and COVID-19 update through at least the end of this school year. And again, we're trying to share with you where we're at and related to the pandemic. And then you're also going to see that we are doing a little bit of shifting of the format of this report. And I'll explain that in just a moment. So let's start with the COVID news. Is that overall, the COVID news continues to be very solid. What we saw over the last week, in fact, the latest data that came from Rice County governing March 27th through April 2nd. That week, there were only 27 new cases in the county. So that's wonderful to hear. We really do see an improvement in that area. And we continue to see quite a bit of improvement. Stabilization is what I would call it within our own district cases. And so while we have seen an increase in cases in the last couple of weeks, we had gotten down as low as, I think we had a low of 8 new cases within the previous 14 days. When we look at the dashboard as of this morning, we are around that 23. What we have seen is we've seen the uptick in cases does seem to be concentrated. We have a few families multiple students in that family, so it's less widespread amongst multiple students, but we've seen some of that clustering within some families. So still, there was a lot of points during the pandemic. We'd be thrilled to have 23 new cases within the last 14 days. Rice County is still in what's considered the low range by the CDC. And we also have seen that our ILI rates have been pretty good. So last week we had most buildings below 2% or below 2%, one building that was just below 3%. We did have the NCEC have an ILI rate of the week of 7%. And I want to share with you why that is not a terrible cause for concern for us. The NCEC, first of all, the ILI rate went down every day during the week. So we saw it start very high on that Monday, and it kept progressively getting better each day. We also have to remember that the NCEC is a very different building in terms of serving our youngest learners. And so that, as you've seen, if you go back to several weeks on the ILI rate, we can see wild swings, right? Where we'll go from above 5% to down under 1% within 1 week's time. This is a population, let's just say we normally have an ILI rate that swings, and even without the pandemic, with our smallest children in the district. So we do have that pinnacle of 5%. As we looked at the data, a number of reasons did not cause us for concern, specifically that we started out the week so high and then kept getting better and better each day, during the week. So this just goes to show to board and to the folks listening that, we are paying attention to that influenza-like illness rate. We're seeing a lot of what you'd consider to be traditional, more stomach and some of those kinds of things. So while those things can have COVID-like symptoms, that is not, necessarily what it is at the NCEC, because we're still looking at the NCEC, even with that higher ILI rate, we're looking at less than 5 cases reported over the last 14 days. So that's the COVID report. As we move on, next part is you're going to see that what we're trying to do is share some pieces that are related to each of the 6 strategic commitments. So with each report, we're going to give you a highlight of something that's been going on and tie it to one of our new strategic commitments. So in this first case, we want to just congratulate HCI. They did celebrate their 30th anniversary last week. They were not greeted with great weather for their drive-through celebration. But we really have had a very positive relationship. This is about partnerships. And we know the partnerships that we have had with HCI have been incredible, including the Youth on Boards initiative, which created the District Youth Council, right? And so we know that youth voice is prioritized in our community, things like Youth Bank, things like other kinds of after-school programming. HCI was very helpful in us pursuing and securing the community school funding. HCI currently is very helpful. They were helpful to us pursuing and operating the Grow Your Own grant that is going to provide funding for 17 people of color from our community to attain their teaching license. So HCI has just been an outstanding partner, and we're just highlighting them. They're 30 years of really doing great things for kids. And this is an example of our commitment to partnerships. As we continue to work to make sure that we prepare every student for lifelong success, making sure that kids see themselves with a positive future is so important. So career speaker series are an important thing that have happened over the years, and really want to thank high school teacher Jake Odell, who's been organizing a speaker series for high school students during Flex. So the list of people who have been there already is very impressive. They've already had professionals in construction, prosthetics, history, finance, elder care, recreation, counseling, politics, HVAC, and photography. Most recently, they heard about careers in corrections, and they even had a couple of K-9 workers there. Apparently, the K-9 workers were quite a hit. But again, we really appreciate people in the community. This is both a learner outcomes connection and a partnerships connection. Sharing what people have a joy in their work or their career is so important, so that students have an opportunity to see themselves in a future light in something that they might enjoy themselves doing. So we really thank Jake Odell for organizing. It's quite an impressive list of different careers that have already been in there. I know they're going to continue it through the end of the year. The third area we're going to highlight today is around stewardship. And just our child nutrition department is amazing. We all know that they're fantastic. If you haven't had a chance yet to listen to Stephanie Strummy on the KYMN podcast, she was interviewed by Jeff Johnson a few weeks ago. She was just last week. Just great explaining about our child nutrition program and the things that they do for kids to help fuel their learning. But we also have worked very hard across the system to help empower our staff members to be active participants in the continuous improvement process. And so the vignette that we're sharing here is our Spring Creek Elementary School, the kitchen manager, Lori Malika. She is, if you don't know, she's unbelievable, right? Knows every one of those kids' names. I've served lunch with her a number of times. We'll be doing so again in the coming months. Knows every kid's name, greets them by name, knows what they want that. And even knows the orders. It's almost like kids coming, yeah, I want the usual, right? And Lori knows that. Lori's also fiercely dedicated to making sure that we're good stewards of all the resources that we have. We don't have to tell you about the supply chain issues that school kitchens have seen over this year. Thankful to tell you that the milk carton issue is back to normal. But making sure that we're using the inventory across the entire system. Lori, kitchen manager from Spring Creek, made some suggestions about how it would be simpler to look across the inventories of all the kitchens in the district. And if I have a meal coming up and I might have needed to try to order some additional product, that they've streamlined the way that they are able to see what the existing inventory is in the other kitchens. So number one, that they don't have to order things or create issues in the supply chain, because we actually do care about other school districts as well. If we already have something, can we make sure that we use it? And of course, if we don't want to have to pay for stuff again, especially at this time of the year, if we know that we're getting down to the point where we might not make that meal again. So what I'm really thrilled about this is I think that this particular stewardship highlight focuses on the leadership that Stephanie Strummy has provided in child nutrition to make sure that the staff that work in our kitchens feel valued and supported, and that they feel empowered to make suggestions about process or systems improvements where everybody wins. And so I really pleased. So I thank Lori and I thank Stephanie for all of their work. And it's a great human story about how process improvement can help, because that's just a good model of stewardship. And then finally, I just want to share that highlighting a learner outcome is that last week, the Department of Education announced the graduation rates for 2021. And bucking the state trend, Northfield High School improved, albeit slightly, its graduation rate to 96.7% of the students, 334 seniors. And out of the 10 students who did not graduate in 4 years from Northfield High School, over half of them will continue on towards a diploma. So I think sometimes when we hear the graduation rates, we think, oh, what are the rest of people assume that everyone else is dropping out? Well, that's not the case. And in fact, the vast majority of the students are going to continue on. The state average graduation rate this year was 83.3%. We also do disaggregate the graduation rate. And what I'll share with you is our demographic groups did, especially our Hispanic demographic group, continued to look very positive, both locally and against the state average. I do want to point out the Area Learning Center. You will see that, remember, the Area Learning Center is a smaller group of students, so it's more susceptible to wide ranges and percentages. So you'll see that their graduation rate did decline last year, but they have over 41%. So between the kids who graduated in 4 years, and I really struggle with the state publishing the ALC 4-year graduation rate, because one of the criteria for students to attend an area learning center in Minnesota is that you could be behind on credits. So we're holding, students who may have had some other kind of risk factor in their life to a 4-year graduation rate when they're going to specifically have a place where it can help them accelerate their credit attainment. But between those students who graduated and those students who are saying that they are continuing on, that means 90%. So just under 50% graduated in 4 years. And then we look at another 41% of the Area Learning Center students from the 2021 cohort who are continuing on. So that is outstanding, right? The Area Learning Centers created this culture where, yep, I know I didn't get it done in 4 years, but as we just want kids to continue, because frankly, there are students who deal with things that adults would really struggle with. And for them to continue on to towards graduation, we think is outstanding. That should be celebrated. And it just is not recognized well enough, in my humble but deadly accurate opinion, as part of the state system for graduation rates. But I think if you think about that Northfield High School graduation rate, 96.7% for the class of 21 during a global health emergency, I think it's a testament to the students for their perseverance and their ability. This is the school year where we started thinking we would have 3 different learning models, where those high school students used a hybrid model where they were in school 2 days a week and learning from home 3 days a week, where about 6 weeks they were doing nothing but distance learning and then came back fully in person for the 4th quarter. If you think about the definition of a disrupted school year, that's what it is. And these students demonstrated great perseverance. It also goes to how amazing our teachers and the other support professionals are to help kids get to the finish line. So really proud of that for 2021. So that is my report for this evening.
Thank you. Excellent. Jeff, did you have a
Thanks,
question?
Matt.
Comment?
I was just wondering on the GED, if somebody, is going for their GED after, they don't make it, they don't graduate, how long does it take that we get credit for having them after the point?
So we can count they do count graduation statistics up to 7 years. The GED though is a separate process. So we would not get, to my knowledge, we would not get a student who got their GED would not count on our graduation rate. But what we have done is we have we're working on it at what's called an adult diploma. And so that's for once students hit that age of 21 where they age out, where they actually go over to the NCEC. They work in a program similar to the GED program, but they're able to complete their diploma. So I will check on the status. We are working on getting the application approved for that. I believe that application has been approved, but we're still working on implementing it. I'll get you an update on that because the GED is a very rigorous process. And I'm someone who hit age 21 and I only have a couple of credits left. We want to support you to be able to continue to finish those credits. So this adult diploma piece is something I know that we are working on, and I'll get an update for you on that in the next update that I do. Thanks, Jeff.
And then thank you. By comparison, obviously our number is very high. And I know that a lot of the metro, schools really struggle with graduation rates, especially, like Minneapolis, St. Paul. Do you know what those graduation rates are typically in a metro versus an outstate, or, that the norm is 80, what'd you say, 80?
83.3% was the average this year, slightly down from 83.8. I don't have that data for other, it's publicly available through the Minnesota report card, and you can actually put number of districts in and compare it. I just don't have that data here with me tonight, Jeff. I really had been focused on Northfield.
No, and that's fine. And I just think part of that is if somebody doesn't graduate, you always want to give them a pathway to get that GED.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah,
Outstanding.
I think that we have the best additional supports for people who struggled to graduate in 4 years than we've ever had, between being able to continue at the ALC until you're 21 years old, the adult diploma route, and then of course the GED option as well.
Nice. All right. Noel, you had a comment, question?
I would like to express a little bit of community support for particularly Dr. Jim Evans, who started the HCI back. He came to the school board, or I'm sorry, he came to me. I was chair at the board. He came to me and said, there are several in the community that really would like to create a program that would support the youth. And it wasn't an extension of the school or the school board. It was a community, but it has really, really been an effective tool, I think, for this community. And I wanted to certainly express the support for Jim Evans that
Nice.
he and several did to make that start.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. I appreciate that. And I think that HCI has been, I do want to share one of their graduation rate, just the demographic breakdown a little bit, because I do think it goes to some of the work that HCI did and things like the Torch program that are coming out of community programs. So this year in 2021 at Northfield High School, 97.7% of the Hispanic seniors graduated in 4 years, compared to 69% at the state level. So I think that that's an example of how a community group like HCI helped influence, support, for a demographic group where we did not have that same level of graduation rate at the time. And so I think that's just an example when we look at these graduation rates and making sure that every student is supported. I think that that's a great testament to the work that the community has done together over the years.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? And thank you so much. Do you want to move on to giving us an update on your recent visit to Arcadia and Prairie Creek?
I'd be delighted to. So as you know, we are one of only 2 school districts in the state of Minnesota that authorize charter schools. We are so blessed to have 2 outstanding charter schools that are part of our school district. So we had what we affectionately refer to as Charter School Week a couple of weeks back, and I had a chance on Tuesday, the 29th, to spend the full day at Prairie Creek. On the 31st, I spent the full day at Arcadia Charter School. Prairie Creek, of course, really project-based learning school, and just a wonderful opportunity to visit classrooms, to see some of those items in order. Got to observe some fifth graders who were opening a fictitious restaurant, so applying mathematics to economic pieces, and had a chance to visit with their board, some of their board members, some of their parents, had a chance to visit with their staff. Really just an excellent day there, and really pleased. They are doing very well financially. In the report, you'll see that they have a very healthy fund balance. What I really appreciate about what Prairie Creek does with their finances is their fund balance is not about the upcoming year. It's about 3 years from now. Charter schools have to be very diligent about their fund balances because they're so small that any real big change in enrollment can create a financial gap for them. So again, great day at Prairie Creek, great day visiting with the students and all of the staff there. They are really grateful for the partnership that we have, and always a good time to spend with Simon Tyler and their folks out there. The 31st, we spent the day at Arcadia. Always great to be at Arcadia. Again, a project-based learning school. And Arcadia, I really noticed the recentering around the project process this year. It was palpable. And Laura Stelter, the director, has been working really hard to make that project process central to all of their work again. And so really noticed that. Had an opportunity to see, I don't recall the name of the person right now. I should have written it down for you. But got a chance to see an artist in residence. So this is a big part of Arcadia, is that performance component. And so they had some artists in residence. It was their first day. Even had an opportunity to see a high school senior who was teaching some of the junior high kids about what the residency was about, and was teaching a segment on an art portion of it, a visual art component of the artist in residency that was going to include music and some other pieces as well. So really just a great day at Arcadia. They now have their fund balance back in order as well. They did see a slight decline in enrollment, which is now they are nearly back to their cap. Their fund balance, after some difficult decisions just around some staffing pieces, is back to where it is. And I've shared that just the one concern that I have for Arcadia, much like many schools across the state, they really struggled to hire special education teachers this year. So they have the students in the budget, they had 4.5 FTE for special education teachers. Right now they have 2. And so those 2 folks are working very hard to meet the needs of the students there. They have a new special education director as of March. And my concern for them is just that is sustainable moving forward. I'm not worried that oh my goodness, they don't know about it. They know about it. They're working on it. They're trying to recruit. There's a number of things that they're doing. But that is a part where I have some concern for them. They already have their positions posted for next year. They're working on, there's some programs with St. Thomas where St. Thomas will be able to help provide a person as a teacher while they're going through their process using the tiered licensing system. So there's some creative things that they are all looking at, but we had a great day at both schools. And I'm just including the reports for you so that we can make it part of the public record about how we do this in our partnership with them. So that's the report for today.
Thank
I
you.
highlighted both of them.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board members? Hey, Julie.
I really appreciated reading the report, and I also appreciate the time you took to meet with students and families and board members and staff. And just if you want to share some highlights of some of the comments that they shared with you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Arcadia, universally, the students will share how much they love Arcadia and how different it is from whatever school, that they came from. And one of the things that Arcadia students highlight every time, and I've been going there for a while now, and I started going there with Dr. Richardson before I was the superintendent and getting a chance to be part of that. But one of my favorite things I look forward to seeing every time you walk into Arcadia in the high school, one of the high school advisories, there's a drawing, an art piece, if you will, of Yoda. Some of you know I'm a big Star Wars fan. I'm always drawn to Yoda, and it says, "Accepting we are." And there's nothing in that school that is more descriptive of how Arcadia operates, and accepting they are. And the students talk about how valued that they feel that everyone has a place at Arcadia. And so not only does everyone have a place regardless of what school you went to before, many of them had gone to Prairie Creek, many of them have gone to our schools. They just love that learning community. And I think the secondary piece is that those students really love the project process. They like the agency that they have to make selections about what they're going to learn. When, of course, the younger you are, the more guardrails you have. But some pretty amazing things that students look into and investigate, and really high quality learning. So they would like, I've never been to a school where they don't ask that they'd like something more for lunch, but they'd like something more for lunch.
Thank you.
Great question. Thanks for sharing, Matt. Any other comments or questions? All right, we will move on to the consent agenda. As a reminder, there are some personnel items in the table file added to the consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Amy, second by Julie. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, we have one item for individual action. And Director of Building and Grounds, Cole Nelson, can I answer your questions? The board will be asked to approve the winning bid at the May 9th board meeting. So we'll take a motion first and then we'll have some presentation and discussion. Is there a motion to approve the district solicit bids for the district-wide security camera upgrade project? Okay, moved by Julie, second by Noel. Thank you. Okay, welcome, Cole.
Good evening, board members. So I'm here to present to you or to get the authorization to solicit bids for the district-wide security camera upgrades. So it's going to give you a little rundown of why we're asking for this, and then kind of what the project will entail. So we started a committee back in September based on some security camera concerns that were brought up. Some of these, when we met as a committee, that was what we determined first, is what are the concerns that we have, what's not working, and what's working well. So some of the issues that we had, so our current camera system is an analog system. Basically what that means is it's a dated system, and most things are digital at this point. So there's some functionality and not clear use of the cameras. There were some that were not working that were just needed to be replaced. And then there were some other storage capacity issues and stuff like that on when we're trying to access some of the footage from days past. So we went through that. We then moved into what's going to look like for a replacement camera system and what was going to work best for Northfield. So we interviewed with 5 different companies. Since the camera systems are very sophisticated and there's a lot of different offerings between systems. Some are more specialized in education, and then you have more that are more geared to banks and different applications. So we met with all those as a committee, kind of interviewed them all in such a way that we had our stipulations, and part of that team we had secondary admin, we had elementary admin, we had our tech team a part of that, members of buildings and grounds team, our master electrician, and then we also had the SROs involved in that as well, from their perspective. So from that, we also toured Roseville High School to see, kind of get their feedback on one of the camera systems, and then also just look at strategies for placing different cameras and how that looks for them, and what's working well and what's not working well for them. So that's kind of led us to where we are today. So included in your board packet is the spec for what we'd come up with. So we are asking for a bid to install the Hanwha camera system. So it will be including the camera system, the VMS software, which is basically what we look at and how we access all the video footage, and then all the different data runs to each of the cameras. So the infrastructure of the camera systems for that. So, and that kind of brings us around to what was partially done in 2018. So Greenville Park obviously got a new camera system at that time when it was built. So we'll obviously be remaining all those cameras at that building, and just transferring it over to the new system. And yeah, we reviewed all the camera locations with all the building heads. and have that dialed in. So we currently have approximately 162 cameras within the district. And with the new update and expansion, we'll be moving to 195 cameras. So there's some buildings that had no coverage, such as the shop. We don't have any cameras out there, so there's adding a few additional ones there, and then also reviewing these with all the building admins. There were some spots that didn't have coverage, whether that was inside or outside the building, that they've had issues with. For that, I think that's a summary. I'll want to take any questions.
Thank you, Cole.
Could I
Okay.
give a little bit of
Go ahead.
context also before we go into questions? So this is probably a little unusual from what you're used to, asking for approval of a project this large. And I just wanted to circle back to kind of what happened. So typically this type of project would be included with our capital projects and included in that budget. We actually had, this has been an ongoing conversation, as Cole said. We've been looking at this for a little while. And we actually looked at leasing and some other options, and we had enough room in our fund balance at the end of last year, and we actually reserved about $500,000 of our fund balance last year. You'll see that we included that in the audit. And so that was specifically there. So I was supposed to talk about this when I presented the capital and LTFM budget, and because it wasn't a line item, missed it in my report. And then as we were getting ready for this, we realized this would be the first time we were hearing about it. So I wanted to apologize for that, because that was something that I was supposed to talk about. But that's why it's not in the capital budget. It's going to be separate, and we have those funds allocated in the fund balance, ready to cover the cost for that. So I just wanted to provide that context.
Great, thank you. And I did, was there a cost in the supporting documents? Or a range? What are we
Nope, not
looking
for
at?
now. The budget is 500,000, and that's what we've been working towards, is being well under that. This will be soliciting bids for that, and so I think we'll be well within reason.
Okay, thank you.
If it's over 175,000, we have to do a sealed bid process and have board approval and that sort of thing. But that's obviously the bid process will kind of determine how much it costs, but that's what we're targeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll take some questions and comments. Noel, you want to?
Yes, I have a question, maybe two. It's a strange question, but what is the security of the security system?
Security of the security?
Yeah, could somebody hack into it?
No, so we worked with Nate Knudsen, our network manager, to kind of figure out how that works. So the system, we would own the system. So there's a lot of different options out there. There's web-based, there's all the different options. So this is our system in a sense. It's a server in our schools. So it's included in our firewall,
Okay.
and managed by Nate, no different than the rest of the internet services.
And the second question, is there any value to the equipment that you're disposing of?
Yeah, so the digital cameras that we've replaced and kind of worked through, if there's old cameras, our electrician has been replacing them. So all of that equipment we'll be getting back as spare cameras if one were to go down, or if we would like to add on to the system, we were able to do that. We'd have to purchase a camera license, and then we could add in those cameras that are digital. The analog cameras are very outdated, so there wouldn't be any value in those. So,
Thank you.
So if I can just add on about the security question. So there was a lot of discussion about whether or not, how the system should operate. And the decision at the end was to continue as we've done. So where we host this data within our school district network, it's not patched through directly to the web. So people can observe it from outside of the district, but they have to use the VPN credentials. That's the virtual private network. So only a select group of people have virtual private network accounts. They use the Fortinet product, which we use, which is a fairly standard secure way of connecting to the network. So then it's as if you are here at school. So some of them will kind of tunnel them through so that you can get it via web browser outside of the district. I spoke with the network manager this afternoon who indicated, no, we're going to keep it inside the security of the school district. And that we are able then to monitor and limit the access based on this VPN approach, which my understanding is more secure than some of the other approaches. That we have to understand that there's no such thing as a hacker proof thing, right? There's nothing like that. But we have, I think, the best that we can for a school system to be able to keep that behind the firewall and to be able to allow us access to specific folks through that virtual private network or that VPN access.
Okay, Amy.
I guess I also have questions about security, which is kind of sidetracking from what you're doing, but I think it's all part of the package. And it seems like yet another thing we're asking our technology people to do. I'm more and more amazed with all the things our technology people do. I am wondering about the cameras themselves. If they're behind the firewall, would that mean there's still a possibility that the students could hack into them?
So it is on we have a couple of different networks, right? There is a network in which I believe these are actually on the printer network. I think there are 3 different networks that we have. These are going to be wired.
Correct.
So they're wired. Students typically are on, there's a student network that student devices are automatically coded to. And then there's a guest network. So these cameras aren't on either of those networks.
So are they on a segmented network that's specifically like an Internet of Things network? So it's only devices, or
Great
are
question.
there people on that network as well?
So my understanding, I mean, I'll get the official word from, there are some networks. We don't have a lot of the Internet of Things. We don't have refrigerators, plugged into, getting that kind of, so we don't have a ton of those kinds of things.
195 cameras though.
Right, but that's the cameras, not the washing machines or things like that that you can now connect to the web. So for example, our printers have their own specific network, right? So there's a separate network for the printers. Now, I don't know whether these are going to be on their own separate network or they're going to be on the printer network. But what I can assure you is, knowing Nate Knutson, our network manager, is that it is on a network that would be separate from what anyone who is on our existing wireless networks would be able to see. And even if you go plug into the network with your computer, that is still even a different network because they will actually patch in. So for example, where our printers are, they will actually patch the printer cord in the back into the specialized network. So even if I've got an open data jack that I can just go up into and plug into, that is even a different network than what the printers and these security cameras are on.
And is there a regular schedule for patching the system?
Absolutely. So that is usually part of the contract. So why don't Cole talk about that?
Yep, so there is new hardware at each one of the buildings, and that's kind of the storage piece and then the actual firmware for the system. So they will be getting all new servers in the back of the house, and that's what Matt was referring to as far as, patching directly to that. And then from there, it'll go to all the cameras hardwired for that. And that is part of the contractor for the bid that we are.
And Cole, I think what Amy is referring to is the software patches. So the contracts, usually our previous contract, the vendor would come out and provide those patches for us. We had a long-term contract with them. Is that software part of this
Yep, no,
maintenance?
software would be part
Okay.
of this same thing. Yep.
And would there be firmware patches as well?
Yeah, so typically when you contract with vendors like this, they will come out and do all of anytime that there's any major, there are more software patches than there are firmware patches typically. So, but they have come on site to do those for us in the past.
And that is all included in this as far as the updates and the regular firmware updates as part of this.
Well, good. And I have one more question for you, Cole. Just if you could speak in general about how the locations were chosen for the cameras, both the existing cameras and the new cameras, and how that relates to students and possibly their privacy, and just how that process,
Don't give away too much.
Yeah, so we looked at it very in depth. So we took a look at exactly where all of our cameras were existing to try to reutilize. We do have some digital lines, Cat6 lines out in the building. So we tried to reutilize those as best as we could. But it was really, we took kind of a first high level look at what kind of coverage and went through that with the vendor as far as what kind of coverages we were looking for, or general coverages. Obviously, we don't want every single classroom or all office spaces. So then they went through and did a design. And then we actually physically walked through every single building with each admin to determine, some of their locations that they, knew were troublesome, and even over at Greenville Park, they've been in there a couple of years. It's fairly new, but we did have some tweaks where we're moving some cameras, to better, where there be some problem areas. So it was a very, like I said, went to every single building and met with each admin team. And the SRO officers were a part of that, along with Kim over at the high school as well. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for your work on this. I formerly worked with the school that had about 150 cameras. And that was the guy in the middle of the night that got to go to the alarm when it's going off. So very simply said, what is how are these integrated with, that you can share, police and fire? And then, what kind of, you mentioned 5 companies that you're working with. And you also mentioned Roseville High School, which must have a good plan, but we can talk more about that later, but just kind of your thoughts on what I just said. Integrated with police and fire would be the main thing.
Yeah, so we do, there's a separate process, for that we do. If there is an instance, I believe it's a board policy that they go for.
No, we don't have a board policy on this, but what they are required to do yet, that is something that as we've been working through this process is that we do think that it's appropriate for us to consider a policy for this. This is something that security cameras in schools got started pretty small and then it evolved over the years. And so we had been discussing today based on a couple of questions about board policy, and we do not have a board policy around security or surveillance footage. We will be looking into that. We've got MSBA has a couple of model policies that we could potentially select. But I think the key thing is that for any law enforcement to get any of our, there has to be a subpoena. So there actually has to be a subpoena that's issued, has to be delivered to us for us to be able to provide any video footage to any law enforcement groups. That's where it comes from. There is not an integration to outside agencies. It is solely looked at by school district officials who have a need to see it.
Well, even, above that, usually what would typically happen is you'd have an alarm company and they would, if something's going off, they would contact whoever, typically who's ever on staff, and get contacted, and then you're going to police and fire. But I mean, in a case where you got a camera and you can clearly see a fire, is there an alarm system built into that, or you just have a network of?
Right now, they're separate. So we have an alarm system for all of our buildings that our motion detector, and then obviously we have the fire alarms
Okay.
that are kind of monitored by one company, and then the cameras are not integrated, together to talk to each other per se.
Great question. Tom?
Will there be any, excuse me, any cameras at the football stadium?
There is none out at the football stadium. We did relocate some on the outside of the high school to be able to capture, that area, but we did not put any out to the football stadium.
And that has no internet connection as it is now? Is that right? Or,
Yeah, I don't know. Anybody who's using it, we have looked at a couple of different things of how to get internet access to Memorial Field, to the press box. What we've been using lately, Tom, have been, if there have been people who are needing that, they're typically using a hotspot. So if KYMN radio comes, they're bringing their own hotspot. We have looked at it was incredibly expensive to bury a cable there for the amount of time that we would look at doing that each year. We looked at doing a point-to-point connection, which I don't see the other point-to-point connection. We had one that came off from the NCEC that we looked at that has not been installed to my knowledge. I think what's been happening to this point is anything that's being streamed from there is being done with a hotspot, which seems to make the coverage.
Thank you. Okay, Amy?
I have one more question. Is there an opportunity here to involve female and minority owned people to place bids, companies?
Yeah, so what we did and what this company has is they have a program that they somewhat manage themselves, and it's based on the warranty that we receive and making sure that we have qualified installers. So I can definitely review that with the camera manufacturer to see if there is. He sent me a list of contractors that they have as part of that program.
Thank you.
Thank you. No?
I don't want an answer to this question, but my concern is being able to shut down the system, disable the system to create mischief. I don't want an answer because I don't think the public needs to know that.
Okay.
One quick question on the Roseville High School issue. Obviously, somebody's trying to show that off. So what did you learn that they do well? And what's the example there?
Yep, so the intent for going up there is to see how another district, a large district, manages that. There was one of our admin had a connection there that we were able to, so it was just an opportunity that we were able to work through. Their system was, they used not the system that we're going with, but they had a lot of feedback just on camera locations and how they manage the system, as a whole. So it was a good learning experience for, some of our admin staff, our SROs and those that they kind of just relate to the camera systems and how they use it and how to maybe better use the camera system that way. So
Good. Thank you. Julie.
Thank you, Cole. You really did a comprehensive review of what we have and what we need, and I appreciate that. I believe you said 195 cameras is what we'll have.
yep, 195.
So
cameras.
was that driven by a budget, or is that really what the true number sort of bubbled up to?
Yep, it was a combination of both. Our first
Okay.
pass was definitely much higher. Right, we get everyone's feedback, and of course, it's easy to say that we want coverage on every square inch. So that's not necessarily reality with putting cameras. They're not very cheap to pull the runs to, and there's a lot that goes into it. So we took a couple passes at what that would look like, and made sure it was still reasonable, that we got the coverages in the areas that we need, full well knowing that we can't cover all square inch. So
Sure.
I think we vetted that very well, and we're able to cut some costs that were very thoughtful. So.
Excellent, thank you. Then this work will take place, I'm wondering when the work will take place and if suppliers you're talking to are anticipating any supply chain issues with getting, all the equipment they need to do the work.
Yep. So this is going to be scheduled for the summer. So they would start right away in June and wrap up in August. Been working with the camera manufacturer that we were working throughout, and they've been working on securing. As of now, there's only like 1 or 2 camera styles that they're seeing any lead time issues with. They're still confident that they'd be able to get them in by August, but there may be just a couple of camera styles that we don't have very many of that we have potential issues.
Excellent, thank you again for your great work on this.
We did. Any other questions or comments? Good. I have a few questions that haven't gotten answered yet. And just to be clear, are we wanting to have hidden cameras?
Hidden cameras?
Yeah, I mean, there was a little joke about don't give away the locations. Are the cameras, they're obviously placed and students and visitors can see?
Yep. They're all like dome type thing, like you
Yeah.
probably see in the hallway out here. So there's
Okay.
no hidden cameras.
Right, and they
100%.
won't be in classrooms. They're all in the
Nope,
public
no
spaces.
classrooms or
Yeah.
offices. These are all located in your bigger spaces, gyms, cafeterias, hallways,
Yeah.
and then exterior of the building covering
Right.
parking lots and driveways.
I was interested to hear how you landed on this one manufacturer in the document here, the project manual, stating that there are no or none for alternates. And so you've chosen a manufacturer. Did you choose the software first or the cameras first? And how did you land on Hanwha?
Yep. So we specified Hanwha. Like again, when we went through, because the camera systems are very different. The camera manufacturers, there is, I'll double check and we are accepting substitutes if there is something that's comparable as far as the cameras, because and there are some limitations. Some VMS systems are compatible with other cameras, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're proprietary to that, and that was one of the reasons that we chose Hanwha, because they work with a lot of the cameras that we have existing. We have Greenville Park that has cameras that we would like to reuse. There's some at Spring Creek and Bridgewater that were added part of that referendum as well, that we will be able to reuse as part of this. So that was a big piece. And then really it was the user interface of the camera system. What we saw everything from the different companies, from very sophisticated, where you could track someone with a blue hat and green shirt throughout the whole building. Obviously, we don't need those types of analytics and tracking in a school building. Hanwha does offer that, but you don't pay for that with the basic package. If that was something we would like to purchase in the future, we would have that capability. But it was a good balance. They do a lot of education, and talking with other districts that have Hanwha installed, they ran into kind of our top 2 that we did, and it came down to the cost. And again, that's a lot driven between what capabilities they have. This was just a good mix of function and not necessarily all the bells and whistles with what other camera manufacturers have. So.
There was some, you said there was some companies that you interviewed that were more education leaning and some that were more maybe appropriate for banks. And so I was curious where Hanwha landed in that. On their website, they don't mention that they're education specific. They talk about providing products, for aerospace, defense, energy, and security.
Yep, and Hanwha is very diverse in that sense. They do have the cameras, looked at ones that they could, you could capture something that was 300 yards away and zoom right in and see someone's face. So they're very diverse that way and have different branches to what they serve. Again, they were able to, their packages are very a la carte in a sense. So we don't have to pay for those types of analytics that an aerospace or something like that would have. We pay for what we need and VMS system that we have for that.
So, and are those features available? Like if we suddenly needed that feature, could we then access that feature? How would that work?
Yep, we could access that feature. There is some upfront costs on the camera types. So if you wanted to do the analytics types, there are specific cameras that you have to purchase in order to access those types of features. Again, you can search, blue shirt, hat color, stuff like that. So.
But I think what I just make sure that what we are getting, we are not getting the quality of cameras that would allow by default those kinds of additional services. We'd have to either update some of the cameras and then pay for the software. So if the cameras have the ability to do some of those things that we haven't paid for, you could update the software, upgrade the software to be able to secure that. But something like what Cole described, those are not the cameras that are part of our mix.
Yeah, and we don't have any cameras that are included in there that we'd be able to upgrade to some of those features. Again, that was a nice tailor too. There was one company that you get the whole thing, which again was great and it was fancy and it was pretty neat, but it wasn't really feasible for what we use those for on a daily basis. It just didn't make sense to pay for that feature and not actually use it.
Right. Okay. And how much input did the SRO have in suggesting the camera types? This. And also there was a camera that I saw that was PTRZ.
Yep. So the PTZs are, from my understanding, there's the PTZs that we have now, which is it's a rotating camera that takes different snapshots at different times. The PTCs that they have now access all the views. You're able to just scroll through the different views. So it's capturing everything to where now they are just a snapshot. So most of the time something happened over here and you're getting a shot going the other direction. So, and then as far as the SRO, they were part of the committee and reviewed, all those types of locations and they had some input as far as something that they've seen at the specifically more of the secondary sites, just because that's where you typically spend more of their time doing, working through situations. So.
And then so Matt, you're mentioning about the VPN. So will individuals have access to the footage off campus using this VPN?
Yeah, so what it will be similar to what it is now. So there are a handful of individuals who have VPN access off-site. Those people who have that right now would be similar to what they will have
The same
afterwards.
individuals.
Right, and those are only school district employees. And I think it's less than it might be a dozen at most. Typically the administrators.
There are some schools that have used their SRO to be able to monitor other areas of the school from one location. Is that something that we're doing?
No, it is not. So our SRO does not have a login at this point. We've changed this in probably the last 5 years, where only our administrators, our security monitor at the high school have access to it. So no, there is no live monitoring of cameras. I think sometimes people see things on TV. They think that, there's somebody in a room somewhere watching and that we don't have that ability. We use the cameras in a reactive mode, not any kind of live mode. It's when we have had some kind of incident, there's been some vandalism, there's been some kind of issue where we needed to be able to take a look at and see, okay, what does the video evidence tell us? We're hearing one thing from one party, one thing from another. Is there something that the video evidence tells us that can help with that? So that's how we use it. We don't have the command center, if you will, where people are watching it all the time.
So that is a feature this software, I think.
Yeah, I think any of the existing kinds of software like that, you could set up that kind of surveillance piece.
That's,
I-
we'll have that availability when we set up all the users. They can have different, we can assign them if they could just see, their own building, which will be what the admin for each building have, and we'll have the rights for all that so that they can make sure that that is aligning with what they need access to specifically.
I have one last question, and that is, help me understand what the camera shall support unicast video streaming up to 20 users.
I believe that was just the number of users that they're having at one time. I can double check on that, but I think we can have a limited number of logins, but I believe that's just how many can be viewing it at one time for that. And that was just not a number that's really specific to anything. It was just to cover it, make sure we have enough, depending on how many users we end up with. So.
Thank you so much. Tom, do you have a question?
Yeah, after some of the discussion, so all the video is recorded. How long do we keep it before we either write over it or?
So in our, like I said, mentioned in our existing system, we have anywhere from probably 2 to 20 days. And as Matt kind of alluded to, we usually use this as reactive. So at sometimes that can be frustrating because we may not have video. So our general standard for camera systems when we're working through is that 30-day mark. So that's about where we landed as far as that. It depends a lot on, it only records on motion. So it kind of depends on the motion. Summertime, there's obviously going to be a lot more recordings available, but it's about that 30-day range is what we had said for a minimum.
And some of that, Tom, there's some parts around record retention that govern that already. But as we look at doing a policy governing surveillance video, we're going to actually outline that in such a policy.
In the current system, you weren't able to access things that were as old as 30 days.
Not at all cameras. No, it varied greatly just based on, digital cameras. They take up more memory just because it's higher resolution in the cameras and stuff like that. And I believe the last camera system update was about 10 years ago.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? Yep.
I was just gonna say, I mean, obviously, like in security, if you have an incident, you just go look at the camera right away and you go back and whatever forward. So, I mean, sometimes that's kind of obviously the way they do it. I mean, if you had security people, you'd go through, keep a log, and if they're reporting an incident, or a teacher or any administrators reporting that, obviously you go back to the camera and just look at that time period. So.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a motion, and so we can go to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Cole.
See them back in a couple of weeks.
Okay, we move on to items for information, and Dr. Hellman will review April 2022 enrollment report.
Yeah, so if you take a look at the April 22 enrollment report in your packet, you're going to see that we are at a total of 3785. So we're down a few students from the last report, not atypical for this time of year. So that is where we are at total, and you can see the rest of the report in your packet. That's the extent of the enrollment report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? All righty, thank you so much. Oh, there was, cool. I'm sorry.
Is
No.
there an explanation for the drop in the high school?
So Noel, what we saw is what we will typically see this time of year. So we're seeing a drop from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So there's a couple of things is that during the year, we will see more students who will shift from the high school to the area learning center. That's the primary part. Now that we have Portage, we've also seen a handful of students go from, we saw some at semester time, go from in-person to online, depending on the circumstance. So typically, that's the bulk of the changes. Of course, sometimes you'll have a student who will leave for whatever reason, but as we showed with the graduation or the graduation rate, last year of 333 seniors, we only had 10 that were not going to graduate on time. So I think when you look at those two pieces together, you see that the bulk of them are either going to the area learning center. Now with some Portage, there are some students selecting Portage as well throughout the year.
Good question. Okay, if there aren't any other comments or questions, we'll close that out and move on to our work sessions. We're going to be determining a date in early June to discuss the high school master plan recommendations, and the recommendations will be finalized at a work session, June 13, 4 p.m. to 5:45.
Yes, so we just wanted to highlight that, that Northfield High School Task Force has its third meeting tomorrow night. It'll finish up in a couple of weeks. So we just want people to be watching their email, because tomorrow, between tomorrow and the next day, Anita's going to be reaching out, seeking a few dates from you, both for the community event that we talked about earlier, and then also for a work session to get the initial findings and recommendations from the high school task force. And then we would like to do a task force, or excuse me, a work session just before the regular board meeting on June 13th. So
Thank you. Okay, that's all the business we have for tonight. Our future meetings are April 25th, May 9th, May 23rd, 6 p.m. in the Northfield District Office Boardroom. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Noel, second by Amy. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye, opposed. Okay, motion carries or adjourned. Thanks, everyone.